This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is show 342, the June 5th, 2018 edition. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you in the Brooklyn bunker, a.k.a. the Kinchin hotel room from the past weekend. Joined, as always, he's back on the planet Texas for about 15 minutes before he comes back to the Big Apple. He's got some stories to tell from the Monmouth contest. He's the people's champion, Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
What's going on? Yeah, no, it was Austin. It's like a futon situation down there. And I told Austin, no offense to PTF and his wonderful wife for having us. I said, well, Austin, aren't you excited to sleep in your bed tonight? It's like a bed, not a futon. It's, pretty comfortable. He's like, oh no, Dad, I love that bed. I was like, really? He's like, oh, I loved it. I slept really good. And I was like, all right, man, well, whatever you say.
That's the cave. I joke and I call it the Brooklyn bunker, but it is a bunker. You are not going to get, by New York terms, you're getting essentially no noise from the outside. It's incredibly dark. You crank up the AC, it's cool. It's like a sensory deprivation chamber. And I have had friends tell me, despite the lack of, shall we say, frills in the mattress down here, that they get some of the best sleep of their lives down here. And even I, if it's one of those nights where parents having trouble or whatever comes into bed and is, kicking, and I'll occasionally sneak down here myself and enjoy the better level of sleep. Sometimes that's good before the day of a big contest or big handicapping day. You got to have your mind right, don't you?
Absolutely. No, it is. It is something special down there. It's dark and cold and quiet. And I did mean to ask you, I don't even have a ghost or something, but sometimes it sounds like someone's coming down the stairs, but they're not. Is that a real thing?
Well, you do know the history of this building, don't you?
Oh, don't tell me that. I'll never come back.
This would be so much more appropriate for one of those Friday the 13th editions of the DRF podcast that we do. But this building, former funeral.
Hold on. I'm dead serious. I'm not listening. Just text me when you're done.
Okay, I'll tell the listeners, and I'll cue you up with a text. Meanwhile, listeners. Okay. So this place was has had a rich history. At one point, it was a funeral home. The second floor, like the pretty parlor level, that's, I think, where the actual, display and whatnot was. So you got to figure that means probably the first level where we are, that was maybe like administrative offices. And I'm kind of guessing that down here in the basement, well, that's probably where the magic happened. So that might be what JK was hearing. Let me just tell him that he's good to go here.
I was half listening. I'm back. But I didn't listen. I just kind of waited for you to say, to hear the echoes of my name. Oh my gosh. I'm going to pretend I never heard that.
So that is possible. I also think in truth, probably Muggs will sometimes come down in the night and check on guests to make sure that they're okay. And then also you're right next to the boiler room. And we did have that one cold night, so there could have been creaky stuff from there. So there are.
Yeah, Muggs doesn't like to lose a member of the tribe, does he?
No. She wants to make sure everybody's together. That's part of her instinct for sure. One place we did all definitely stay together was at Monmouth on Saturday, JK. Incredible turnout for the Pick Your Prize. 205 entries. You had two of them. We'll start with the headlines. Bill Rendino getting the job done, winning, and very cleverly in a way, I think, just going the all-cash route and ending up with over $50,000 in cash, starting with a $2,000 entry to this contest. Not bad work if you can get it. Our friend of the podcast, Scott Carson, with another in a long line of impressive performances in contests over the last few years. He ends up second. I wrote about both of them in an article on DRF tournaments. But I thought folks who are new to live bank contests in particular might get something out of your story and what happened with your two entries. In all seriousness, I think you played it great. Other people might disagree. Let's talk about it and see if we can give some folks some insight into how you played at this year's Monmouth Pick Your Prize.
I'm gonna have to try not to choke first.
Okay.
I'm alive.
Send somebody down to Austin.
No, Austin's in the other room. He can come in here and do CPR. All right. Yeah, no, we went back and forth and talked about it. If it was overly aggressive, if it was
from the how you started out with 1,000 on each entry. What happened from there?
Yeah. So 1,000 on each entry. Was kind of surviving through minimums. I actually picked up some money early. I bet the same thing on both, and picked up like $650 on each. Used that $650 to take another chance later. Kind of ended back at the 1,000 on both of them. Kind of went back and forth, zigged and zagged. Eventually took a pretty big shot and ended up with 3,200 on one of them. At that point, my goal in the Monmouth Pick Your Prize contest is because it's such a large turnout for a live money tournament. The NHC is always a goal of mine, but I believe, I'm going to play in a lot of contests throughout the year. I've already got a couple of top 10% to get tour points. If you can finish in the top 10% of this event, or even in the top 5, you're going to get a lot of tour points, which are going to make it very easy for you to kind of take the backdoor entry into the NHC, which is through tour points. So my goal was to get into the top 5, which was going to give me 2 prizes off the board. From the Pick Your Prize board, the top 5 guys get to pick 2. At least I thought it was top 5. It ended up being top 7. The top 7.
The way the prizes dwindle, and this is a really important thing. People might think we're getting into the weeds here, but I want people to think about this. Anytime you're playing in a contest, as soon as that prize pool is finalized, you should really inspect it very closely, because as this story will perfectly illustrate, it's going to affect your strategy. So yes, JK, 2 players did get 2 prizes, but like you said, you're already in a fantastic position to get an NHCC via tour points. So the NHCC, just for this event, for you specifically, not talking bad about the NHC, but for you specifically in this tournament, NHCC, not super valid. So the 6th and 7th did get both NHC and BCBC, but were you able to finish in the top 5, you were going to get at least, or likely to get at least up close to 7,000 in cash plus a BCBCC.
So another 17,000 essentially. Or if you wanted to be real particular, you call it 14.5, right? Because the 2,500 that goes in the prize pool, the beater out, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
The beater's cut. So when I was in the position of 3,200, I believe I was in 4th place. The leader was not really something I was going to be able to catch. I didn't have any strong opinions to finish the day. Scott Carson was at like 7,500. There was really no way to catch him and no real purpose to catch him. If I could just get 3rd or 4th, I would be right where I wanted to be able to pick 2 prizes, a BCBC and a large chunk of cash. Also, there was like a little secondary cash prize. And so what I decided to do was I felt like 3,200 might not be enough, but if I could somehow get to closer to 4,000, 3,800, 3,900, I feel like I could wrap it up. And I thought that Analyze It had 0 chance to lose off of his figures, off of the pace scenario, off of Chad, off of just everything. I felt like that horse had 0 chance to lose. And at the top of the stretch, I felt the same way. So what I decided to do,
with 50 yards to go.
Yeah, exactly. So what I decided to do was I bet $3,200 to win on Analyze It at 1 to 5, who was going to help me pick up those extra needed chips that I needed to push me into that position. Now, some people, I'm sure a lot of people are gasping like, oh my gosh, you got 3,200 on a 1 to 5 shot. But essentially, I was turning a 1 to 5 shot with a $4,000 investment into the contest. I was turning a 1 to 5 shot into a, call it 4,000, call it 10,000, 17, call it 21,000. I was turning a 1 to 5 shot into a 4 to 5 to 1 shot. I feel like there's good math there.
Yeah, best value of the year. I think that was JK Tries Math Succeeds, and I think it's exactly what contests are so good for: the ability to create these value situations. Now, obviously, it's easy after the fact when the horse loses to see it another way, but I stand by the play. And if you look at the prize board, if you look at the final scores, your 3,200, had you just sat from there, which was an option, I think you'd finished your minimums, you would have only gotten an NHC seat. That you would have ran 8th and only gotten an NHC seat. And let's say you got it up to 3,900, you would have finished 5th, 7,000 Breeders' Cup. It would have worked out. Your math was perfect. Now, how different would you feel if the scores had been lower? What if 32 would have gotten you that 7th or somehow 5th? Would you? That doesn't make it a bad decision to me. It just means it would have been a less likely and cruddier outcome. But do you think you would still have the sort of equanimity to look at the situation and say you made the right decision? Evaluate the play on its own terms.
But you know how Luke Skywalker used to have these visions of like Obi-Wan like coming to tell him stuff. I would have had a vision of like driving home like with Bill Sherman standing next to me telling me like, why did you bet yourself out of it?
I like Bill Sherman as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think there might be something there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm aggressive by nature when it comes to these situations, right? And it's like you have to when you're playing in these contests, if you go in with the fear of losing your bankroll, you're already kind of beat. You have to be able to part ways with that mentally and financially in order to succeed in these, and like, look, I took a shot. I took a shot at what I thought I needed to do. You have to make decisions. You can't just ever make a safe call because you don't ever know what's going to happen. You never know if where you're at is going to be good enough or it's not going to be good enough. And you have to make a decision based on what you think. There was 205 people in the contest. With low denominations, people can take a lot of risks and do a lot of crazy, kooky things that people might not do with larger denominations. And so I felt like the leaderboard would shift late. And so I wanted to be proactive in getting to a higher level because I didn't think my 32 would stick. If my 32 would have stuck, I'd have been like, well, too bad. I wouldn't have felt much worse about it. But no, I still think it was a good play. I turned a 1-5 shot into, like you said, 4.5, 5-1, and I got beat.
You were 1 to 100 in the stretch, if not shorter. And we'll get to talking about the actual race in a minute. The only things I'll add on is you talk about having to take risk. It really depends on what your goal is. With you looking at that prize board, saying you wanted to be top 5, you have to take risk. You can also go in that contest, lay up, double your money, and get an NHC seat. Now, if that's your goal, one of the best, got to be the best situation. Is it the best situation all year to win an NHC seat? I'll ask it as a question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a live money contest. There's 23 seats. Now you are paying. Now the truth of the matter is that you are paying $1,000 into the prize pool. So I think people don't be that's pretty strong, putting in that $1,000.
It's returned 100% though.
No, of course, but you still have it's still a pretty high contribution to the prize pool. The reason I mention that is because I'm still a huge believer in the Hawthorne contests are great value. They don't give that many seats away, but it's a low dollar amount, live bankroll, no rules. You can do whatever you want. You can play pick 4s, pick 5s, pick 6s. And there's no entry fee. So I still think that that's a great opportunity for an NHCC. It's not in this contest, you hit 1 or 2 bets, you lay up, you get an NHCC, and that's fine. That's great. But
1 in 10 ratio. We always talk about player-friendly ratios. Monmouth has a super duper one.
Absolutely.
The other point I wanted to piggyback was when you were talking about Bill Sherman. This to me is very different. The famous incident where Bill Sherman not chided because he was trying to help you, but he advised you that you were betting yourself out of position. That was very different. That was in a Del Mar contest where you were already in an amazing spot and all you had to do was finish top 5 to win $10,000 for the first half of the NHC Tour a few years ago. I mean, not to offend you, but I mean, I think Bill was clearly right in that situation, and you probably, with a little more experience, agree with him.
Oh yeah, no, that was very silly, It's because when I used to play in these contests, I used to feel like every time I played in them, I needed to try to win them.
Right, that's interesting. And really,
I'm at the point now where I've realized I don't have to win them all. I just need to do well, I need to do well. I need to remain involved. I need to not lose, not zero out a ton. And when there's the times to zero out, you zero out. But you can't zero out all the time. There's times where you have strong opinions late, strong opinions. You have a chance to win it all. You zero out in those situations, which is what I thought I did here. I had a chance to make $21,000 or whatever it is. And I tried to, so I went with the zero out move there.
Yeah, it's all about figuring out the goal for each individual situation and tailoring a plan to get there. Now, let's talk about the race itself. Congratulations to Catholic Boy, a favorite horse in training of mine. I just thought he was going to be a little bit up against it. I was a little concerned about the ground. I was a little concerned about a potential pace advantage from Analyze It. How about the ride on Catholic Boy, JK? Let's start there.
Well, I think that I look at the ride in two different parts. The first half of the ride was brilliant, right? To kind of put him into the race and to kind of stick it to Analyze It and put the more battle-tested horse on the lead and just let him have to run him down. After that, I mean, there wasn't a lot to it. I mean, he stood up and tried to act at the right outside the 16th pole. And in most situations, he wouldn't have. That would have been that acting would have costed him the race. But for whatever reason, Analyze It just hit a wall, and Catholic Boy kept coming, and it ended up working out for him. But the first half of the ride was brilliant. The second half, I think, was kind of lucky. All
right, well, let's break it into the two parts. It was as if Jonathan Thomas was the third member of the podcast team in his post-race interview, where he talked about being aggressive, trying to let another horse, instead of just going slow and be comfortable early, to stretch him a little bit, to make this horse who was going the distance for the first time actually have to get the distance. There's this relationship between pace and distance and stamina. When horses crawl early, a mile and an eighth might just as well be a mile, because they're not really running for that long of the distance of the race. However, in this case, being put on the stretch from early out, maybe that brings stamina into play. And we'll talk about the what really happened in the stretch after. But I want to go back to what JK said about he described it as acting. I don't know how I feel. I mean, my gut says you might be onto something there. To be fair, I believe for himself, Ortiz said there was some fear of potentially clipping heels there. You're not buying it?
Well, I'm not. Look, I've never sat, like I told you, you've seen a picture of me. I've been on a horse one time, and it was in Puerto Vallarta on the beach, right? Like, I'm not. It appears to me that, and I don't have a problem with it. I get why guys do it. It's strategy, and I get it. When you get into a tight spot and you think you are beat, what the heck? Stand up and act like make it look worse than it is, to give yourself an opportunity to get you, your owners, and your trainer into the winner's circle. I don't have a problem with it. It's not like I think that Javier is like disgusting for doing it. I just don't. I think that he got lucky that horse had that much run left. He did that situation, and he pulled him up like that. And then, oh my gosh, he does have run left. If he would have skipped all of the jazz and not stood up, he probably would have won even easier.
I said it wrong before. I said Ortiz, and of course I meant Castellano. Let's talk about the finish of the race. I feel like you can watch 1,000 races and you don't see that. You just don't see that happen, where the horse sort of shakes free, goes 2 lengths clear, and then gets caught like that. I suppose part of it has to do with what we were just discussing, the little incident in the stretch. Another part of it might have to do with what I was intimating before about really bringing stamina into play, though you wouldn't think on pedigree that the extra distance would have been a problem for Analyze It. What's your theory as to what happened?
I'm like this whole time we've been having this conversation, I pulled up YouTube and I've been watching the stretch run the entire time. And I don't know. I guess I don't know. It didn't even look like he hit a wall though. So I just don't.
Days later, and you can't even begin to comprehend what you saw, is what you're telling me.
I mean, he did start kind of shortening, but when I first watched it, I thought, "Oh, Jose, come on! I can't believe you let up." Jose did not let up.
Did not let up. Yeah, that is not what happened. It's got combinations of things. I think that Teese, who we'll talk about a little bit later in the show as well, made a good observation of just Catholic Boy being the more properly battle-tested horse and asserting, he didn't use this word, but I think of it as in like the old school sense, which I think in the old days was a handicapping factor that was overrated probably by the market and by a lot of horse players. But I think in our figure-oriented 2018, sometimes it can be underrated, and there really are horses who have more of that fight, more of that competitiveness in them, and they get in a real tussle, they have the ability to prevail. Do you think there might have been some of that going, Catholic Boy?
Yeah, no, for sure. Had a much more challenging campaign. The other, I guess that could be taken into consideration is that like dirt racing is more of an all-out thing. It's more of a from start to finish. You're running. There might be a sense of concentration early races for some horses, or a sense of coasting home, but more of an all-out type of situation. Maybe his experience in those dirt races has kind of changed his mindset. Is this is when I pop from the gate, I'm running the whole time. Whereas these turf horses, especially the Chad turf horses, are kind of just like save, explode. Obviously, this horse is a little bit different. He's had some success on the front end, but I mean, maybe there's something to that as well.
They're going to come back in the Belmont. They're going to be running farther. Do you see any pressing reason why Analyze It might be able to turn the tables, or do you think that Catholic Boy is just superior?
It just depends. I mean, it's going to be a tactics race, right? I mean, if there's going to be a bunch of speed in there, and I don't know. To be honest, as much as I like Analyze It, there's not a lot about that situation, that last race, that makes me feel like he's something I want to bet moving forward.
I don't disagree. It could be one of these situations we talked about on the show before, to borrow the cricket term that they apply in UK racing that you don't really hear here very much, but maybe on the podcast we can do something to popularize it. The idea of a flat track bully, a horse that just looks totally awesome when they're supposed to win and when they're better than everybody else, but you put an equal in there and maybe it's a little hard. I don't want to go there yet with Analyze It fully, but I think from a betting point of view, prices and tactics and the rest of the composition of the field, of course, we all reserve our right to revise our opinion come July 9th or whenever the Belmont Derby is. But my gut is I never should have got off my guy Catholic Boy in the first place. But no, at the same time as I say that, that's so easy to say after the race. Before the race, I still supported your decision. I wasn't going to bet him at 1-5 with my own money, but I thought for you in the contest where you're getting that, overlay, it made perfect sense. Let's talk about some other racing from the weekend. What were some other performances that caught your eye?
Well, the big horse is one we definitely got to talk about.
Oh yeah.
Long on Value. You were falling asleep on the couch. Carrying on, I gave you some fajitas from the Mexican spot across the street, and then next thing you know, you're over there. I had to keep waking you up, so that we could watch the big horse run. And he missed the break a little bit from the inside, and was chasing a little bit early. But at the same time, they never really disconnected themselves from him. He didn't fall too far out of it. And then I remember the fractions came up at 23, and you had said something expressing concern, and I was equally concerned, but I try to be optimistic and trick myself during racing that we have a good shot. And I said, well, at least he's still connected. He's not like they're not going 23 and he's way back there. He's still connected. And then he swooped the field and won like a good thing. It was fun. It was really exciting, and he ran really, really well. And hoping that fingers crossed that I can pull this passport out and see if I can use it in the next couple of weeks.
I like it. For those who don't know, JK and I have the tiniest piece possible in this partnership with Long on Value, thanks to our friends at 10 Strike Racing. And yeah, the figures came back strong. I mean, to crack a triple-digit figure with a slow early pace, to look so visually impressive, just objectively, this is a horse I've always liked. and certainly seems like a divisional player. Sounds like Woodbine on the Queen's Plate undercard will be next with a chance for a win and you're in from the Breeders' Cup. Horse would have to be supplemented for the Breeders' Cup, but based on how he looked on Saturday night, I certainly would not rule that out. What about some of the pen races, JK? I know you and I were both sort of on the ferry from Monmouth watching the pen races, coming back to New York City, that amazing view of the Statue of Liberty we got and also of Lower Manhattan. Maybe the most awesome thing we saw was on the screen.
Yeah, Hawkish was super, super impressive. We both we even had an attempt. We made an attempt. We forgot the race was going to be a run. We were both out of position to. Well, I'm out of position being a Texas resident. You were out of position just based on cell phone service.
Perrin my phone. Perrin was very good. Both kids were very good at Monmouth. But this is what happens to you sometimes. You don't see it when you look at your records at the end of the year. You don't see the money you didn't make because your daughter ran your cell battery down to 0, and you have no way of getting a bet on when you're on the ferry coming back from Monmouth. But thanks, Perrin. I'll put that on your tab.
We were talking about Catholic Boy. We were talking about how the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf was a key race. We were looking through the field, and I saw a horse's name encumbered that was running in the Penn Mile. Reminded me that I wanted to bet Hawkish. We turn on my phone to watch the race after we had to wrestle it away from Austin. We turn on the phone. We see that they're like loading, and we scramble like, oh, what are we going to do? How are we going to bet this? So we go to call a friend who was also not in position, and we were going to make a wager on Hawkish, who won for absolute fun. Really nice horse, one that is the type of horse I would look to bet moving forward in the Belmont Derby, rather than a horse like Analyze It, who gave up one of the most puzzling leads in the deep stretch I've seen in some time.
I'm going to break the show rules and ask you the question that I don't know the answer to. Have you seen figures yet for Hawkish?
I have not seen a figure for Hawkish, but this is a podcast move that I do from time to time.
The one where you just keep talking while you look up the answer? That one?
Essentially I just do I just say words and they don't really even mean anything, to be honest. And then by the time I realize that I'm looking at Parks and not Penn National, which will also slow me down a little bit. But then typically I can figure out a way to work it out and tell you that I do know his figure, and he actually came back with a 113 on the time form scale.
113 on time form, so that projects mid-90s buyer. I'll look up the buyer while we talk about other things, but that was certainly impressive. Should we talk about the race out west? Unique Bella's return to the races?
She is she's something else, right? I mean, I feel like she gets a lot of love as being this like ultra talented filly, but she like never seems to like run them together. She had that one little run, I guess, where she won Philly and Mare Sprinter of the Year, where she kind of ran them together. But that was even kind of a weird division that year that she won. But now she seems to be back. Time form US 134.
Wow.
That's like arrogant gun runner type fast.
That's blazing.
Yeah.
I'll look that up on Buyer.
But she's done a 133 before, so it's not like it's out of nowhere, right?
Not completely nuts. No. Hawkish was 89, by the way, on the 89. Buyer scale. I'm looking forward to the day, by the way, and also ran in that race Maraud, who of course knocked him out knocked us out on Derby Day like his brother did a year ago. I don't know if you've seen it, JK, but there's a video on YouTube of Maraud and Arklow sitting on Unbridled Empire's couch, just talking nonsense about us for 45 minutes. It's pretty embarrassing.
Oh my God, you didn't even prep me for that.
I did. I thought it would be better.
Oh my God, that is amazing.
Let me look up the Unbridled Bella figure. Excuse me. Now I've thrown myself off coming up with this stuff off the top of my head. What else did you see this weekend other than Unique Bella, or do you want to talk about her a little bit more?
No, I mean, I just think that she's one that I've always heard. Well, I've not always heard. I've heard from various people that have better opinions on how horses move and action and horse flesh, that she is going to excel with more ground. Like she's going to actually be better the longer they go. And if it wasn't for like this inconsistency with her races, that she would eventually have gotten to that point. So I think that if we can keep her healthy, if they can keep her healthy, she can, and kind of keep her in track. She could probably be a lot of fun this summer to do some really, really, really cool things. And hopefully that will all culminate with the Breeders' Cup Distaff at Churchill.
103 on the Beyer speed figure scale. Interesting from a betting point of view, what can sometimes happen. Interesting betting opportunities in a short field where it's Unique Bella ran so well that the other two horses who were anywhere near her were actually, really trying to make active moves to beat her. Paradise Woods and Vale Dory both end up falling out of the exacta. So you get La Force in there at 24-1. So even though you have a 1-2 shot with Unique Bella, you end up with a very solid looking exacta, because those other main contenders get horrified, and you still end up getting almost 11-1 in the exacta pool. Just the kind of interesting bet to make sometimes when you like an odds-on horse that you think can horrify or just take down the other horses who are going to be close and let somebody else come running by late. I like to point out those type of opportunities, because I think that that's a pattern you see in a lot of top class racing.
Another really cool idea about this is like really down the rabbit hole, but sometimes it's fun to say stuff like this. But Unique Bella's mother, Unrivaled Belle, her 3 races at Churchill were like her 3 best races, where she beat Rachel, she won the Distaff, and then she was second to Blind Luck in the La Troyenne on Oaks Day. But still, those are her 3 of her best races in her career were on that surface. Well, obviously, I'm sure the surface has changed a bit since then, but and one of those kind of fun facts that's probably a little bit more silly than it is something you want to make a wager based on, but interesting nonetheless.
Definitely. There is still time for folks looking to sign up for the Belmont contest this weekend. Want to tell people to get in touch with Dom Labetti at Belmont. Get those spots secured, because I do believe he is closing it, I think, tomorrow at the end of the day. There might be a little bit of wiggle room there, but big money. I think you and I both like the way that those rules have been changed, and I'm assuming it should be a good running of the contest and attract a strong field from around the country. I presume you'll be participating?
I will be. I'll be looking for another 1-5 shot to bet all my money on at some point.
Well, let me ask you this. You're in a similar position. It comes down to the end. 1-2 Justify, maybe a little bit shorter. As bullish as you've been on him, could you see doing something similar again, in all seriousness?
I think no. I think one of the differences and one of the things that would have been different in this situation with Analyze It is that Monmouth didn't have doubles. So not to give like kind of my strategy, but I would have played doubles into Analyze It if I could have, just to try to use an earlier handicapping opinion to do better than 1-5, right? I would have actually probably played it in a way where I would have had a chance to win the thing or run second with the opinion of handicapping the earlier race. Now that's going to all depend on what happens in the Belmont, according to how they card it, which we'll find out, I guess, in the next 5, 6, 7 hours. I don't know what race is going to be before.
It's almost always the big turf race. I mean, I can't remember a year where
didn't they do the Met Mile once?
Maybe. I could be misremembering. I feel like at least 80% it's going to be the turf race, but I guess it could be the Met Mile. I mean, it really is the second biggest race of the day.
I want to say that Palace Malice's Met Mile was right before the big race. I could be wrong though. But I do think that like Flintshire, when he won it, was before. I think maybe they go back and forth, or maybe they don't, or maybe I'm just hoping that that's what they do. I'd rather have the Met Mile before the turf race.
Where are your strongest opinions in those two right now? Or do you just think that the turf race is chalky? Or why would you rather have the Met Mile?
Well, I just, like in the NHC, like we talked about it at the NHC, I bet all dirt races except for the mandatories. That's my comfort zone. I feel more comfortable there. I feel it's more formful for the way that I look at races. I feel like turf racing has more chaos. turf racing has more variables in terms of trip and pace and all of that stuff. Like usual, I mean, not that pace doesn't matter on dirt. I'm just saying it's just more. There's more variables. You find horses on the lead in turf races that shouldn't be there and have no form to suggest they'll be there. You see the opposite. You see horses that should be on the lead be last. That doesn't happen as much on the dirt. It's just more chaotic. So I prefer. I
think a lot of it comes down to this idea we've talked about before, where the real running happens. In dirt racing, you can measure that ability, I think, more confidently because you can measure it from when they break from the gate to the pace call is very, very often where those races are won and lost. Now, the market obviously knows this too, but I think what you're saying is in terms of the way your brain works, you'd rather focus on that than in a turf race where a lot is going to – the ability is more reflected from the pace call to the finish, and it's a lot more unpredictable where the sort of checkers, chess pieces, however you want to describe them, are going to be lined up to that point. It's very logical to me. I was just curious this year, since we have some sense of the composition of the fields, if there was a particular, you thought Mind Your Biscuits couldn't lose or whatever, and we're looking forward to laying into him or something like that.
Oh no, I like Biscuits a lot. I mean, he's one that I would definitely want to consider. He's not like a single situation for me. I'm interested in who else is running on the Met Mile that caught my attention.
I'll run it through for you with prices at the sharpest of the odds I'm seeing from over there. Though these look a little deflated, honestly, some of them, but I'll just give it to you. Mind Your Biscuits 11-4. Backyard Heaven listed, but I'm pretty sure Backyard Heaven's going to be the Stephen Foster. Though interestingly, the Sharp book is the one that still has them listed for the Met Mile at 9-2. Bolt Doro at 3-1. B Jersey 11-2. Awesome Slew and Good Samaritan at 6. McCracken 9-2. Longer the rest.
Yeah, I mean, I could see myself doing a little, Awesome Slew maybe. But I'm not even enthusiastic about that. But I have less of opinion in the turf racing. I mean, run through some of those if you don't mind.
No, I got it right here, and I'm going to do that. I feel like the top of the market seems pretty strong in this one, where you've got Beach Patrol 11-8, High Happy 5-2, Sadler's Joy 9-2. But I know you always have a soft spot for One Go All Go, who's in the betting here at 7. Potential shipper, I believe, in Alexios Kamenos at 14-1, Spring Quality 14-1, our personal troll Arklow at 16-1, and longer the rest there.
Yeah. I mean, there is some bigger names there. Beach Patrol off of that outside trip, off that wide trip or inside trip with Yoshida. He was inside of Yoshida, so that's something I guess you could consider. One Go All Go. I've talked about the reasons I think he's a possibility. Sadler's Joy, who runs well at Belmont, will obviously need a little bit of pace to run at, which he'll hopefully get with One Go All Go if no one doesn't go with him. And then I better go ahead and wrap my brain around that if that's an angle I want to look at, because I've gone back all the way to 2014 and the Met Mile has never been right before the Belmont. It was just wishful thinking, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're going to be looking at this turf race. I think Beach Patrol is going to be awful tough, but I have such respect for High Happy, I'd be loath to leave him out. And Sadler's Joy, obviously, major talent as well. My gut just tells me it might be a bridge too far for One Go All Go against these top-level ones, but usually when we disagree about these type of things, the speed horse you like outruns the odds and does very well. So
I just think on the turf, if you're looking for a horse that might not be good enough, then you typically want to find one who's going to be forwardly placed. Because in a situation where a closer that's not good enough creates a scenario in which there's a scenario created in which he can win or she can win, then the other ones that are good, that are better than that one, are going to win. But if in the opposite, when it's a horse who's going to be forwardly placed, like I feel like they have more of a chance of making the magic happen, and especially in a turf race. It's
almost like they have more outs just by the fact of being in the lead fewer things, in a sense, fewer things can go wrong, right? I mean, in every sense, fewer things can go wrong, even in a turf race when you're on the lead. I just think the class of Beach Patrol, I mean, this is a horse who I really believe was best in the Breeders' Cup Turf and had an excuse for the last out and should just be sitting on an unbelievable race. Unfortunately, going to probably, I'm guessing, has an opportunity to be close to odds on. So for your purposes, I don't know if that odds on to odds on double or even money to odds on double will be enough to get it done. We'll know a whole lot more in a few hours. We're going to have the Belmont draw. It'll be really exciting to see what goes on there. We'll talk more about the race on Friday. I also have a very special show tomorrow night. You can sign up for it right now on DRF.com. Always a pleasure to be joined by Andy Beyer, and Mike Beer will be joining us as well. This time we're going to go through, I don't know if it's going to be the pick 4 or the pick 6 races, but that'll be a fun show to join tomorrow night at 7.
Yesterday you told me that you had a show you're doing beer and Beyer, and I was like, whoa. You're doing like a show where you're going to have beers with Andy Beyer and you didn't invite me? and then you corrected me that it was
that would be a heck of a show, and Mike Beer would be great for it, and so would you. So maybe for a down the line DRF live opportunity, we'll have to make this a reality. But we'll leave that in the capable hands of our video team to potentially veto or give us the green light with. What else? There's so much to talk about. Lots of stuff going on in the world of racing. Did you have an opportunity to watch this Jim Gaffigan video from CBS Sunday Morning?
Oh, I feel like I let you down. I know you told me to watch it. I have not seen it yet.
It's okay. I'll just give my take on it. It's interesting because a lot of people whom I respect intensely are like really bothered by it, including Paul Matisse. Now, usually when I have a disagreement with Paul Matisse or I'm on the other side of an issue for Paul Matisse, I just accept the fact that I'm wrong and he's right. So that may well be the case here because he was definitely rankled by it. And he made some good points especially about the media environment and the fact that, he thought it was very low blow, or at least implied that it was kind of a low blow that an opposing network to the one running that's going to be broadcasting the Triple Crown would run something basically pretty belittling of horse racing just a week before they have this big thing going on. And I do think that's kind of cheesy when I put my sort of media hat on. I didn't think the piece was funny. I do think there was like maybe 2 little jokes in it that did make me chuckle, if I'm being completely honest. Mostly I just thought it was just very light and kind of out there and just didn't do anything for me. But I will admit I was surprised by the level of like vitriol coming back from certain corners of the horse racing industry towards this piece that I felt like in the big picture was essentially, I'll say it. I kind of just thought I didn't think it was good, but I kind of thought it was harmless, and it didn't. It's not the kind of thing that I would have be talking about on the show had it not been for the pushback from horse racing Twitter. And I guess I just wanted to make the point, and this could be, there's plenty of room to disagree with me, but I just thought when someone criticizes you and your reaction is to get super upset about it, it's hard to not look like kind of thin-skinned. And maybe I'm talking about more than just the Gaffigan video when I say that. And I feel like sometimes the better reaction is just to like change the conversation or, I don't know. Gaffigan, he's funny. I've seen him on the late night shows. He's got his 76 kids and he makes jokes about them. And I've got no issue with the guy. The idea of like reaching out to him and just like saying like, hey, would you like to come see what a day at the track is really like? Like that would be more like my way of pushing back in this situation. Now, you haven't seen it, so it's almost ridiculous for me to ask you to comment on it. But what do you, just from what you've seen on Twitter and what I'm saying here, do you have any opinion at all about this, or should we just move on?
Well, I started watching a little bit of it. Look, and just like I pulled up like, him on YouTube, and essentially like everything he does, all he does is just find things to like make fun of.
Right, it's
one of these things is owning a boat is weird. Well, is it really that weird? Like, Like, why is it weird? It's, he's making fun of McDonald's. He's making fun of Southerners are slow. He's making fun of Jesus. I mean, like, look, here's the thing: is people don't have to get our sport, and it's actually funny. As many people that are like angry about this is this is a kind of a good time to pivot to this other discussion that we talked about having, was like the idea that the Triple Crown is going to save racing. American Pharoah did it, or this one. No, it's not going to save racing. But it is an opportunity for people who don't know about our sport to be possibly introduced to it. And maybe they aren't going to like it, and that's fine. But at least it's an opportunity for them to be introduced to it. I told you, and I challenge all of our listeners who don't agree with the Triple Crown as an extreme positive for our sport, is like, look at your cell phone. Go back through your messages on May 5th and see how many random people that you don't ever talk to texted you to ask you who you like in the Derby. And then I want you to look what happens next Saturday and how many people text you and ask, is this horse going to do it? Or when he wins, or if he doesn't win, they're going to text you something after it. We're bringing eyes to our sport so that they can possibly fall in love with it in one of the ways that we have all fallen in love with it, whether it's from an equine appreciation standpoint or a social interaction, social event standpoint, or from a business standpoint, or even from a gambling standpoint. Like, all we want to do is introduce the sport, and people, they're always going to have naysayers. I mean, think about how many people like protest outside of the NFL for concussion stuff, and how many people the steroid stuff in baseball, and all of the negative things that all the negative press that soccer got with the FIFA blah 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 blah, and the racism stuff in soccer, and all the we're going to have some negative press. Like, that's fine. It's going to come with it. Like, don't get all up in arms about it. And like, let's just continue to promote our sport to people that aren't aware of it and try to work ourselves through it. Like, no, I don't think that the Triple Crown is going to solve the problem. I also think that if I went for a jog today, I'm not going to lose 10 pounds with one jog. Like, you have to have positive points of interaction for people so that they can possibly find a way to fall in love with the sport like we have. I just don't. It doesn't get me that worked up.
I like what you're talking. I like when you're tilting the conversation towards marketing. And I think that's where this whole idea of the value of the Triple Crown comes into me. I was somebody who defended. There were certain naysayers who don't deserve a call on the show, who were proudly talking in the wake of American Pharoah how it wasn't going to change anything. And my attitude about that is that I think it's just short-sighted. And I think we'll take a step back and we'll talk about marketing as a concept. I know my friends in the liquor business, especially those with like strong financial backgrounds, marketing makes them a little crazy because unlike a lot of other things in business, marketing isn't something where you can say, we spent X and it generated Y. It is the fuzziest of factors when it comes to running a business, to know what the value of marketing is and or when it's going to show itself. So when you accept that idea about marketing, that to me is where you can't 3 years later take a look at a set of numbers and say, see, look at these metrics. Look at what they are now. Look at what they were in 2015. They're only the tiniest bit better, or they're a little bit worse, or whatever the actual reality is. You can't just tie that to, winning the Triple Crown had no long-term effect. To me, also, the idea that 3 years is long-term. And there was a fine article. It had one line, really, or one paragraph or one thrust that I objected to. And I commented on Twitter. Chris Larmy tweeted it at Derby1592. I am spacing on where it appeared or the author's name, and I apologize because the author, I think, largely did a good job. But trying to make conclusions about the long term based on 3 years, first of all, to me, that's just nuts. To me, long-term value from a marketing point of view of having horse racing on the cover of Sports Illustrated and having a generation of kids maybe have heard of horse racing for the very first time because of American Pharoah, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that could take a generation to have any idea of what kind of long-term effect it's going to have. So I think it's silly to look at dollars and cents 3 years later and try to conclude anything. You think that's fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not all, like you said, it's not easy. It's not the easiest thing to quantify. And people who are very numbers oriented might struggle with it. But I mean, I've already got 2 people text me and say like, "Hey, will you help us make a pick six on Saturday?" Like random people that I don't talk to except for 2 times out of the year. They're paying attention. And one of the guys who messaged me was this like college kid that I had met through this kid I used to coach in Austin who hit the pick six on American Pharoah Day, and every big racing day he hollers at me, and like he goes to the track now randomly with friends and like goes to Sam Houston, and like he's not a full fan, but he's a mini fan. And when he gets older and has like expendable income, I would imagine he'll become like a real fan. Like those are all moments of like opportunities to bring people into the game in a positive light. And I get very agitated at people like with like this this hierarchy of like, oh, it's so annoying that we talk about celebrities all the time on the NBC broadcast. Well, who cares? Like if that's what like brings people in, then like let that bring people in. Oh, why is the sport about fashion all of a sudden? Well, yeah, if that's what brings people in, then like let's use it. Like why does it matter?
Yeah, which reminds me, I would love to have, I don't know that they do it, but I'd love to have Johnny and Tara on the show to talk about their outsiders' perspective of racing. These are, talented professional athletes who are on TV representing the sport to people who aren't already in the tent. These are people I'd love to talk to and learn from about their perspective.
If you think about why the NFL is, this is kind of a weird question because they're kind of in a little bit of a moment, but why the NFL is the most popular sport in our country, it's because they've done a great job of making the game for everyone. And they did it through fantasy football, where they've now got, your mom, your sister. Like my mom's played fantasy football with her friends from work, and she doesn't even know what a quarterback is. She actually does, but you know what I'm saying? Like it brings in these people where now suddenly you've got some 28-year-old woman who typically would be at brunch is now like, oh, you know what? I kind of want to see how Tom Brady does because I have him in my fantasy football league. Like that doesn't annoy maybe it does annoy the hardcore football fan, but the NFL continues to play to that. And I don't understand, they have the female line, like, clothing line. They have the Play 60 for kids to get involved. There's all these different things that you can do to open up our window. But like racing, for whatever reason, we take ourselves way too seriously. And it's like if you didn't spend an hour handicapping the race, then like you're not allowed to like talk about it.
Which is so nuts and should be the exact opposite. I mean, I agree. There are certain hardcore gamblers who get very eye-rolly about this stuff. Whereas, and look, I'm not saying that the sport is marketed to the masses in some perfect way or anything like that. But the whole idea of bringing more eyeballs in, it's marketing. You don't know. It might not even be that person. It might be someone that they bring to the track who then becomes somebody who's going to really support the game at the windows. I think part of the problem, JK, is that gamblers, obviously do get the short shrift in a lot of ways, and it's kind of an easy thing to lash out at. But I think the more that the fan side of the sport and the gambling side of the sport can come together, the better that's going to be for the gamblers. If somehow sports betting, we get the pricing under control, if we fix some of the technological problems that make us look so inferior to sports betting, we can compete on a level playing field. We're going to bring in a whole lot of new people, and they're not going to know as much as us, and that's a good thing.
Heck yeah, I love uneducated bettors in the pool. That's great. That's like that's we should be celebrating things like that, And the other point is like don't forget that like I was the guy who started off betting, $50 worth of Exacta boxes on Derby Day. That's where I started. Like you have to let these people start somewhere. And to one more point, someone said something about, let's do they should just have like a matchup bet or like an even and odd bet once we get the sport betting thing cleared and have like some weird something that resembles a sports bet for players. And someone was like getting like worked up about the price of that bet. And I know that you and I semi disagree about this. I don't care. Like, give them something that they can do that allows them to experience the thrills of this game with cashing a wager. And if you need to take an extra 10 cents so that you can appease all the government hands that are in your pocket, that's fine. I mean, I wish it was better than that. But let's take what we can get.
It won't grow if you don't price it right. It won't work if you don't price it.
But let's have an entry level situation that doesn't have to be priced perfectly. Let's price the other things better. But if like you have to, if I can have a 50-50 bet with 25% juice, then like, and that's the only way I can have the 50-50 bet, then give it to me that way. Just give it to me that way so that people can play that.
We do disagree on that. I just think if you're not pricing it anywhere, if it's completely out of bounds at 25%, it's a little bit like don't bother. To me, the chance you have to innovate and do things correct on pricing probably comes more with new ideas because they're new and they can't look at a spreadsheet saying, oh, we've been making this money and now you want us to take that much money out of every dollar. With something new, you don't have that problem. To me, you say, hey, look, they built all those casinos in Las Vegas for a reason. This is their pricing. Let's try this new experiment using this obviously established correct price level. I just think you're giving up too much if you say, okay, we're going to try this cool idea. You're basically killing your idea before it starts because you're taking this great idea. It's not going to work priced wrong. And then everybody's going to say, oh, look, your idea was silly. Nobody cares about a 50-50 bet. I feel very strongly about that, but there's room to disagree.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I'm saying in a perfect scenario, let's get the thing priced right.
All right. We only have a few minutes left. I definitely want to point out that article I was referring to that, like I said, has a lot of good stuff in it. Dan Wolken, I think it's one of these articles, and this has happened to me, not at DRF, but at other places where the headline doesn't really completely accurately describe the content. A very common problem writers have with their work. Again, not at DRF where the headline writers are awesome, but this has definitely happened to me. I think the headline doesn't really speak to all of what's in this article. Dan Wolken, USA Today Sports, Triple Crown, American Pharaoh, you Google that kind of stuff, you'll get it. While we're talking about marketing, this is something I've wanted to talk about for a long time. We don't have time for the full discussion, but I'm going to just do the Cliff Notes version of it here. Anti-marketing is also a thing. And one of the things that Paul objected to in the Gaffigan piece, and I saw other people objecting to too, was he was making some sardonic comments about the whip and the use of the whip. And I do believe that whip use is something that, while hardcore horse players, don't seem bothered by it in the slightest, we're sort of used to it, we accept it. Very often when I've brought new people to the racetrack over the years, this is something that they object to that I don't really have a good answer for. And we're seeing it more and more in popular culture. If you go back and watch The Force Awakens in the scene on the gambling planet, that's clearly, there's a sport clearly modeled after horse racing, and they portray the spurring on or the whipping or whatever you want to call it of the creatures there. They portray it as very cruel. And this is something that people are seeing around the world. And, I think that's what people think. When you take a person, forget that they have any racing experience, just take them there for the first time, let them watch the horses run down the stretch. I would say there's almost a 50% chance you're going to get a visceral negative reaction to the way we use the whip. I'm not saying you have to take the whip away entirely. I understand that the whip is sometimes needed for safety, but I just feel very strongly there's, at the very least, what you need to do is educate the public and have consistent whip rules where you at least give a horse the chance to react to the use of the whip, as opposed to just thrashing away in the stretch, which you see way too often, in my opinion. Frankly, I wouldn't mind them just having the whip for safety only and hand riding and making it a level playing field. I know that'll make some people's heads explode within the industry, but I think from a marketing point of view, and again, we're getting back to marketing here. I'm not saying I don't know what a horse feels or doesn't feel, not my area of expertise. But even if the whip didn't hurt at all, it looks so bad, it hurts bringing in fans at this critical time when we have this opportunity through sports betting to bring in fans. And then I also know they have the cushion whip, which they use in certain places, at least in England. I don't have my full knowledge on this, as you can tell, but I'm like halfway there. Or the NSA, the National Steeplechase Association, uses it. And at those meets, you can go and you can see the whip and you can see it makes a loud noise, but it doesn't have this, it's not hurting the horses the way that people would worry. Anyway, I think that these issues are something racing needs to face head on at this critical time in our sports history. And I don't think enough people are talking about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I think that it's definitely has an appearance of being problematic. And I think a lot of other sports have done things to clean up their image, or at least try to prevent a problematic issue from continuing. And I wish that we would probably look a little bit deeper in here. I have talked to enough riders to know that there is a safety concern. So I'm fine with that. Having it there as a safety measure in case you need to correct an animal from hurting themselves and or you, that makes sense, or other people or other horses. But I do think that I don't see there's two issues, right? One is I don't see what the problem is with if no one's got a whip, then what's the, if no one can use it, then how does it really change the game? Does it change it that much? And I think the answer is probably no, because it's not like you can't use your whip and someone behind you is. There's no whip. So why can't that work? The second question I have is and I'm guilty of it. I do it. I say it to people that don't know that ask me. I say, oh, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt them. It just gets their attention. And I don't really, to be honest, I don't know that that's true. I don't know. And who does know? I mean, how do you really know if it hurts them or not? And I've even heard the argument, and I hate to anti-market ourselves, but I've heard the argument is they can feel a fly back there and swish it away with their tail, that their nerves are so in tune. However, they can't, that doesn't bother them. And I don't know if it does or not. I don't know the answer, but to me, it's just not necessary. And you said something in a group text earlier that it doesn't make, as from a marketing standpoint and from an industry standpoint, the whip does not make us money as a sport. So why is everyone so attached to the use of it in as a method to get the horses to run faster?
I think jockeys would object wildly to this because it's what they know. But I think in a generation of training riders a new way, even they wouldn't care. Today, I'm sure they care a lot. It's an important tool in their toolbox, and certain jockeys are, very good at when and how to use it. Others use it kind of indiscriminately, and with certain type of horses, maybe that's actually, something that makes them money. But, that needs to be – you got to worry about friends of mine who call me during the show knowing that I'm on the air. I'm not sure what type of disrespect is intended there from our friend Anthony Robb, who actually qualified. Hurricane Anthony qualified for the NHC at Monmouth. No word if he just played all the ones. I'll ask him when I call him back later. But as I was saying, in a generation, I don't even think the riders would mind. I think that's where you get the most pushback. I think it's something that needs to be talked about more and explored. I don't have all the answers. Let's say it is that, and I don't think this is the case, but let's just say theoretically the whip didn't hurt the horse, or the cushion whip doesn't hurt the horse, which I'm pretty sure is true. Then you should have a booth in the backyard where when my friend says, "Ooh, that sounds terrible. Why are they hitting the horses like that?" Oh, you go see. You can see what they're actually doing. You can hold the piece of equipment in your hand. You can see that it's not, unfair. It's not deleterious to the horse's health or whatever it is. This is what I'm talking about. It's marketing. All this, it's sort of the theme of today's show. It all ties into ways that we can present our sport in an honest and true light that makes us look good going forward and makes new people feel good about coming inside of our tent. We've talked about it before. Very nice to get those people in the tent where they can participate and affect change, as opposed to what so typically happens, which is, people in the tent throwing rocks outside and vice versa. Not the way I like to roll. We are just about out of time, JK. Any closing thoughts on this or anything else?
No, if you're getting down, Friday is already up. So get after it.
Fantastic.
For Belmont,
Thursday, Part of Belmont, also supposed to be good. I'll be out there Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're going to probably record the show super early Thursday morning. I don't know if producer Craig will want to run it live when we do it, or maybe they'll just hold it and run it at 11 on Thursday. But we will be back. We'll be talking all about the Belmont Day card. We'll have plenty of time to take a look and handicap that. Should we production meeting at the end of the show? Should we just do us, or should we bother one of our friends? Since it's so early, maybe we should just do us.
Yeah, that sounds probably right.
So we'll be back on Thursday. Thanks to JK. Thanks to producers AJ and Craig, Willie Nile, and Travis Stone for their help up top with our introduction. We'll be back on Thursday. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.